Lesson 2.3, Dividing Fractions. You've already had some time to work with this, so let's discuss those solutions. How many quarter hours are in 3 hours? The problem that you did was actually 3 divided by 1/4 to get 12. How many thirds of a cup are in 2 cups? 2 divided by a third will give you 6. How many half meters are in 5 meters? 5 divided by a half is equal to 10. And finally, how many eighths of a mile are in 4 miles? 4 divided by an eighth is equal to 32. So let's take a look at when we divide fractions. One example is when you're trying to figure out how many episodes of your favorite half-hour TV program you could watch in the 1.5 hours you have available. Chances are you're not thinking about math at the time. You're worried about your mom coming home from work and telling you to do your homework. So think about how many times does a half hour go into 1.5 hours, and you probably pretty quickly come up with a solution of 3. 1.5 divided by half is equal to 3. When you're faced with division problem, like 18 divided by 6, you think, if I have 18 items and I make groups of 6, how many groups will I have? Okay, we have our dividend, which is our starting point, our divisor, which is how big the groups are, and then we get our solution. How many groups of 6 items are there? There are 3. And we're used to, in division, when we divide, we make things smaller. So conceptually, understanding what happens with fractions is a little different. When we divide fractions that are between 0 and 1, the quotient is going to be larger than at least one of our fractions. Let's think about that. A half divided by half is equal to 1. A half divided by 3/4 is equal to 2/3. So let's look at how we can solve these types of problems. Dividing a whole number by a fraction, as in our warm-up today, you have 3 divided by 1/4. Use prior knowledge and the illustration to figure it out. So if I start with 3, how many groups that look like 1/4 will I have? The answer is pretty obvious, that you will have 12 groups of 1/4. What's something else we could have done with those numbers to get that answer? So 3 divided by 1/4 equals 12. Do you see a relationship between any of those numbers that might help you determine that the answer is 12? Remember that whole numbers are fractions over 1, so it's 3 over 1 divided by 1/4. Well, let's look at the steps, and let's write these down. So how to divide fractions. Step 1, convert all whole numbers and mixed numbers to improper fractions. This is our example from the prior slide. So we convert 3 to 3 over 1. First. Step 2, keep your first fraction. Step 3, change the operation to multiplication. Step 4, flip the second fraction. I don't really like the term flip. I prefer to use the term reciprocal, or find the reciprocal of the second fraction. If we look at this 1/4, okay, we know, hold on, let me get the pen working. We know that right here, 1/4 times 4 over 1 is equal to 1. So if you're ever having trouble finding the reciprocal of a number, know that every number times its reciprocal is equal to 1, because you would have 4 over 4, which equals 1. So every number times its reciprocal is equal to 1. So find the reciprocal of the second fraction. Step 5, multiply the numerators, then multiply the denominators, just like yesterday. And step 6 would be to simplify if possible. So if you ever have a fraction over 1, you could just write it as a whole number. So let's look at a couple examples. 5 over 6 divided by 10 over 21. So if you're dividing a fraction by a fraction, you would keep the first fraction, change to multiplication, and find the reciprocal of the second fraction. Rewrite the problem. Look for any common factors that you can multiply out or cancel. And then you can multiply 1 times 7 and 2 times 2. If your answer is improper, change it to a mixed number. Let's try this one. 9 over 14 divided by -2/7. Remember to keep change and then find the reciprocal of the second fraction. Divide out any common factors and multiply. Our answer would be -2 1/4. If we're dividing a fraction by a whole number, remember that whole numbers and mixed numbers need to be changed to improper fractions first. So remember, we're finding the reciprocal. So 3 times 1/3 is equal to 1, so the reciprocal of 3 is 1/3. And if you think of the whole number 3 as a fraction over 1, 3 over 1, then it's easier to see the reciprocal as 1/3. Again, divide out common factors, and then multiply. In this problem, just follow the same steps, more practice. 5/8 divided by a -7/10. So the answer would be a -25 over 28. Remember that you would have to rewrite the problem as 5/8 times -10 over 7. You can factor out a common factor of 2 before multiplying, so 2 goes into 8 4 times, 2 goes into a -10 5 times, so 5 times -5 is a -25 over our 28. Let's evaluate when x is equal to 2/3 and y is equal to a -4/15. So use substitution first. So for x, you would write 2/3. For y, you would write a -4/15. To rewrite the problem would be 2/3 times a -15/4. Divide out common factors. A -5 over 2 is equal to a -2 1/2. Something to keep in mind, that when you do these, if you start with a mixed number or a whole number, that you're changing it to improper before you perform the rest of the steps.